Good afternoon, Facebook friends. It's Maria again here for Lunchtime Live, coming to you from the Tijuana Estuary and in beautiful Imperial Beach, California. And I'll wait to see if anybody is joining me for this another edition of Lunchtime Live, which has become a regular Tuesday event that I've enjoyed since we are still closed to the public in our visitor center and of course our walks and talks. So this is a way for us to share this place we love and protect with you. Hi Mark, good to see you too. I'm glad you're ready. I am ready too. I look forward to these and they make the weeks go by fast. Looking forward to seeing you guys through Facebook and interacting with you as we deliver these programs in this challenging time, this unprecedented time. And it makes it more accessible in many ways. So I am gonna just dive right in. I went pretty long last week. I got the impression people really like salt marshes. Hi Donna, thank you also for being a regular there. I'll just get a couple of housekeeping out of the way. Our visitor center is still closed, parking lot restaurant is still closed. I'm here, a few of us are here. We are following protocol with face coverings, disinfecting equipment, and keeping our social distance. And when we encounter folks on the trail, we do the same. We are, State Parks is increasing access all the time, so stay tuned as we move through this time together, and our website and Facebook pages will be places where we announce openings. So I appreciate all of you being patient and following all the protocols as we move through this challenging time in our neighborhoods and back into the community as access increases. It's really important as we get through this together, and so that we can all get back out here and we can deliver these programs in person. So it is a beautiful day. Hi John, ciao. It's a beautiful day here. It just burned off and the helicopters are not with us yet. So I'm out here at the very north kind of end of the research reserve. You may recognize this for those of you who have been here before. I'm right by the trestles and I am off trail. Some people may not realize that this is off trail because there is definitely evidence of people being here, but I am off trail. I shouldn't encounter anybody. Hi Ann, great to see you there. And on this edge of this north end of the rich salt marsh habitat that we have and that we introduced to you last week at Lunchtime Live, Life in a Dynamic Environment. And today we're going to get up close and look at a couple of examples of those adaptations that we explored. And there's always some questions that are a bit unrelated to today's topic, and I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you when they come up. I will answer them later as a comment this afternoon. So I appreciate all the questions. I do want this to be interactive, but I'd like to stay on topic if that's all right. So let's get back to accumulators, storing for survival. So if you're just tuning in and you're here for Lunchtime Live, Salt Marsh Series, this is the second episode, I suppose. Accumulators, storing salt for survival. So just a really quick review about salt marsh adaptations that these plants endure or have evolved to endure as they live in this dynamic environment where a lot of salt is coming in, among other things. So yeah, did you hear the rails? I'm sorry, sometimes I'm just concentrating so much on trying to be engaging and what I have to say that sometimes I don't hear what's around me. So I appreciate that, those prompts there. So you guys are my ears as well as I deliver this program. So we are on the edge, in the upper marsh area. And I mentioned that the marsh is last week that although it looks so flat out there, there is zonation from low marsh to high marsh. And today we are, hi Judy, today we are of course again on the edge of the high marsh. It is not appropriate to go into the marsh right now, especially in nesting season, but it also is just very damaging to the marsh unless you're doing some sort of research monitoring. But these plants have evolved to adapt to their place within that zonation. And dealing with salt is a major undertaking, meaning that it is an intensive process that these plants, that these few species, not a big palette of salt marsh plants species, because they have evolved this adaptation for dealing with salt. And we mentioned 2 last week, and we're going to explore one of them this week. And so if you guys remember that word, accumulator, that method of storing or accumulating, I do have a graphic for you today before I pull the camera down and we get up close with the now I've forgotten the word. Hi Joe. Where we get up close with the if anyone can help me, the lens, the macro lens. Thank you. Thank you, brain. So I want to show you a graphic before we look at a couple of examples of accumulators. So if you remember, the accumulator method of dealing with salt is that plants absorb that salt water through their stems, through their roots, through their stems, and then have to deal with it. So they don't need the salt water to live, which is what a lot of folks might think. However, they have to have a way to deal with it. And accumulators do something that sounds kind of nutty, meaning like they hold on to it, which if salt is damaging, well, why would they hold on to it? Why would they hold on to it? So I'll do my best to pause when I ask questions, but I know there is a delay. So, first off, can everyone hear me all right? I hope everyone can hear me all right. I didn't get any prompts that you didn't hear me all right. So I'm just gonna keep going. Hopefully it's not frozen. A couple thumbs ups. Yes, okay, great. Okay, great. Little delay there. All right, so accumulators, they store, if you remember, in specialized cells. Great, specialized cells. And so I have with us today a graphic from our exhibits, since the center is closed, but some of you who have been there before may have seen this, of a cross-section of one of the plants we're going to explore in just a minute. So this is a cross-section, and I've done something today where I've flipped the camera so that it should be able to read. You can read the words, however, this is mostly an illustration of a cross-section of a plant called pickleweed, which we will explore. And you can see there that the salt crystals are contained in that specialized cell or vacuole, this cavity, where as the plant takes in that salt water, it concentrates it into a specialized a cell, so to speak. So the salt crystals are contained, and the plant can continue to photosynthesize and thrive and throughout the seasons. So there you go. And this is again pickleweed. You can see there it's what it looks like for a plant that has those specialized cells and a plant that doesn't. So hopefully everybody can see that fairly clear. Okay, so we're going to be, so this is accumulators. This is what accumulators do. This happens to be a pickleweed, which we're going to explore, but there are other accumulators in the salt marsh community. Hello, how are you? I'm doing great. And if you're just tuning in, you're here for Lunchtime Live, the Salt Marsh Series, Accumulators Storing for Survival. So this is how they do it. They store the salt water in specialized cells. Okay? Now let's take a look at a couple of examples. And let me ask you guys, how many of you have heard of pickleweed? Pickleweed. I'll wait a minute here. Actually, hang on a second, let me put this down so it doesn't blow away. All right, so how many of you have heard of pickleweed? So pickleweed is a plant here at the Tijuana Estuary that, I'm gonna tap. Plant here at the Tijuana Estuary and in many salt marshes that is fairly dominant. It's very dominant, low to mid-marsh plant. Great, yes, yes, a lot of you, our estuary friends here, have heard of pickleweed. And we are going to get up closest to pickleweed. Oops, I don't know why that looks crooked there. We are going to get up close to pickleweed, and we'll talk a little bit about how it got its name. So pickleweed is just one example, but it is probably the most common species of accumulator in our salt marsh community here at the Tijuana Estuary. So let's get down and take a look. Now, pickleweed's scientific name has changed several times, and actually has changed several times, and it is right now Salicornia Pacifica. It is Salicornia Pacifica. It tickles your tongue. Oh, really? Yes. So it's Salicornia Pacifica, and it's this plant here that I'm holding in my hand. You can see it's quite abundant. It grows again in the coastal marshes in worldwide. Essentially, it's not just here. This species is native here, but there are other pickleweeds species around the world, and the one here, this is the Pacifica, okay? And there are some other ones that grow in different zonations of the marsh as well. But this Pacifica here, you can see, gets about maybe 18 inches, 2 feet tall. We can see it. I'm down on the ground. We can see it there, kind of poking out all over. Not very tall, okay? And it is, like, oh yeah, I mentioned it's found in our coastal marshes. So elevation, not more than, maybe 300 feet at the most, is what I've read. Although that we are far lower than that here. And as you might imagine, when plants like pickleweed, these accumulators, are storing that salt in water, okay, they are relatively thick, like a succulent, okay, and smooth, and also the term fleshy. The term fleshy and smooth for the surface of the plant. So maybe you guys can see that there. I'll get a feel for that up close. Now I'm going to put on the macro lens as we explore this plant a little deeper here. All right. So you guys will be my feedback. Oh, how's that? How's that macro lens? All right, so pickleweed. Now what you think you might be looking at are stems, and you're right in a sense. So this is a plant that, if I can show you down here at the bottom, has the older stems here lay more horizontal, sort of the main stems, the horizontal stems, and then these lateral stems, or these stems that grow more upright, are what we see here. And the leaves of the pickleweed are more like scales, so to speak, scales that hug the stem. It's kind of hard to see that here, maybe. It's clear? Oh, good. Thank you, Anne Marie. I appreciate that feedback. Trying with the sun here. So you can see those scale-like structures that are actually the leaves that hug the stem. So a lot of people will look at this plant and think there are no leaves. However, they are. And these stems, which are kind of segmented, as you can see, there are segments or jointed, have these scale-like structured leaves that hug them. A very modified leaf system here. This is a perennial plant, so it dies back in the winter, is very green in the spring and summer like it is now. And as it concentrates that salt water through the season, through its growing season, the cells start to fill, and as the plant goes more dormant, okay, it will start to turn red. It will start to turn red. And we see this often in the tips where they start to get full. Well, we don't see them getting filled with salt. However, the tips will get that kind of a reddish color, and they will eventually fall off, and that salt is then separated from the pickleweed. So this plant absorbs it, accumulates it through the season, storing it in specialized cells that then fall off. Great question, Joe. Does it have flowers? And I was hoping that I might see some. So the flowers, again, very modified, very tiny. They're contained kind of in fleshy nodules at the sort of these kind of where the jointed, segmented structures are. And what we see sometimes are the stamens and the pistils that are kind of emerging. And oh, maybe I found one here. Oh, I think I found one. How do I, oh boy, let's see. There's one. Maybe I'm a little too close. Sorry. This is a very, can you see that little nodule? Trying to be steady here. Just above my thumb. Patience. I'm so sorry. It's tough. My left is your right. There. So if you want to give a thumbs up that you can see that, there we go. So these flowers, tiny flowers. Each flower produces one seed, just one seed. I did not know that, read that. And they typically flower, spring, summer, I believe even through until November or so. No, sorry, July to November. So we should start to see them, like we see that one emerging there. See that one emerging there. Let me see if there's any more. Great question. Oh, good thing. I'm glad you see it, Mark. So I was hoping it'd be more obvious. Now, one description I had, when you do see those, mostly we see the stamens and the stamens and the pistils that are what are emerging. They look kind of flaky, like dandruff flakes, which I thought was kind of a not very nice, fun a description, but I guess so. So just little white flakes, I guess, is how they look when they come out. And I have seen that before, but not often. And then, yeah, and then they flower about the time when the dormancy has started. So remember, these are perennial, so they do go dormant. They lose their segments that are filled with salt water after turning red or pink. Okay, these flowers are wind pollinated, and we know that here there is a lot of wind. So I'm sorry, I'm just reading this question from Joe. So yes, so the accumulation process is a way of filtering. So maybe you missed the illustration I had where we showed the cross section. So these accumulators have special areas within their fleshy tissues that store salt and water that then prevents the rest of the plant from being affected by that salt water. So they definitely don't need salt water to live. They just have they've evolved a way to deal with it. They have an adaptation, and they could easily live in fresh water. So these are plants that have evolved to this method from land. So this is not so much the marine environment. However, this is an environment that is regularly flooded by salt water twice a day, depending on which zone you're in the salt marsh. So these plants have to deal with that life in that dynamic environment of being submerged with salt water in concentrations, as some areas of the salt marsh to only get the highest of the high tides. Okay, so again, these are wind pollinated with flowers, although again very modified, because it takes a lot of energy to be an accumulator, to deal with that salt. And so again, these plants out here, and I'm down on the ground. Let me remove the filter there, or the macro, and you can see this is very low, a low growing coastal meadow of sorts that's inundated with salt water. So these plants do not get tall at all because of that intense environment. So this plant is the Salicornia Pacifica. Salicornia Pacifica, our pickle weed, and it is in the goosefoot family, along with, I didn't know this, beets and spinach. So, but a lot of the plants in this family are salt tolerant. So in the goosefoot family, and I have to look this up, or I have to read this off my piece of paper here, the Chenopodiaceae. Chenopodiaceae. They are Chenopodiaceae, the beets and spinach, the goosefoot family. Okay, so there you go. The pickleweed, Salicornia Pacifica. Now, some uses. So I've had this question asked: is it edible? It's not. We don't promote eating this at all. Kumei eat this. This was something that was used primarily chewing on the stems when you need salt. So although we are also not adapted to drinking salt water, we do still need a little salt as humans, and so we because we do lose salt and we need to replenish our salts. And this is a way, chewing on these stems, that was observed by Kumei. So this is a salt source for them. And yes, and sometimes it is called sea asparagus. I believe in Europe, this is something you can get in restaurants. People cook with this. People pickle this. Their versions of Salicornia, their native Salicornia, they eat this. So it has a history of being eaten, not just by by native people here, but in other parts of the world. And then, lastly, I'll say about pickleweed is, for those of you birders out there, oh, thank you, Anne Marie. Chenopodiaceae, thank you. See, she's the ecologist. It was my first time hearing that, seeing that family with that name. So, for the birders in our group today, or anyone watching later, there is a bird, the Belding Savannah Sparrow. The Belding Savannah Sparrow. So the Belding Savannah Sparrow, which is a state endangered bird, for those of you who are birders out there, the Belding Savannah Sparrow nests in dominant pickleweed, or say salt marshes dominated with pickleweed. So pickleweed is a nesting resource for the Belding Savannah Sparrow, a state endangered bird. So it's important, these healthy stands of pickleweed are important for not just providing a plant community and dealing with salt in this area, but also to provide nesting for the Belding Savannah Sparrow. So, Salicornia Pacifica, the pickleweed. Okay, now we're going to look at one more accumulator today. So I'm going to take you to that plant. And question, I saw a question about the wooden posts. Those are old, even though since we're here, and if you've been here before, you might already know this. These held a sewage pipe that dumped raw sewage from the residents of Imperial Beach out to a channel where the tide then took that water out. So it is a low tide. I don't know if I mentioned that. It is low tide today, and low tide right now, actually, at about 12 o'clock. Low tide, about a 1.5 foot tide. And it's so funny, this phone. There we go. And so Mark says he sees the Belding Savannas off the North McCoy Trail between the benches. Yes, so there's a lot of pickleweed in a very healthy, large area of salt marsh over there at the North McCoy. So the second plant, or the other accumulator I will show us today, which is also here in the kind of upper mid-marsh here, is one called Jamaia Carnosa. I'm gonna grab my lens here, my macro lens, and we're gonna look at Jamaia Carnosa, and we'll kind of compare it. It's kind of growing in here. It's actually dominating this area with a few pickleweed stems. So you may already see the pickleweed stems, and then you might see something exactly the same color, but different leaf structure, shape, different leaf shape, but same color. This is our Jamaia Carnosa, and that is its scientific name. It is just kind of simply called Marsh Jamaia, or I've just called it Jamaia. So it doesn't really have a common name that's different from its genus. So Jamaia Carnosa, and you can see it's got that kind of fleshy, I don't know if you guys can get that feel from what I'm doing here, but this is really a smooth, sort of fleshy leaf, and it may look flat, but it's got a thickness to it, so it's absorbing that salt water as well and storing it for a length of time. This is also a perennial, and you can see a lot of stems here, a little thinner stems, and the leaves on these come off the stem in opposite direction. So the leaf on these is prominent. You can see that. It's about, you know, 1.5 inches or inch long or so, coming off of a stem. So not that scale-like leaf of the pickleweed. Instead, it comes off, but same color there. So we can sort of compare these two, pickleweed and Jamaia. Okay. Now the Jamaia is, like I said, it's a perennial. It flowers again spring and summer, but I couldn't find any flowers. And this plant is in the Asteraceae family, which is the aster family. Let me put that lens on. Hard to find that lens there. It's in the aster family. It's in the aster family, which is the daisy family. So the flowers on the Jamaia are a yellow daisy. There's a yellow daisy. And there's a closer look at something dead on there, but oh, here, look, here we go. We have why? There we go. Can we see Can you see that there is oh my goodness, a flower head there. So we can see that flower head there. And that is going to be a yellow daisy in the Jamaia Carnosa, another accumulator in the salt marsh here. And now this one is only found on the west coast of, but from British Columbia to northern Baja. So just the west coast of North America. And you can see how low it grows. It doesn't even get, I don't even think, a foot tall here. Maybe 10 inches or so, growing along the ground. Kind of resembling in some cases, I guess, ice plant a little bit. It spreads by rhizome. So those are like modified stems under the ground. And yes, I will post the Latin names for these. Yes, very good. Thanks for that question. These will grow, these stems grow underground. These are spread by rhizomes. So there you go, the Jamaia Carnosa and our Salicornia Pacifica. Whoops. It's our Salicornia Pacifica. I'm struggling with the focus today. I think because everything's moving. Is a little windy. And I have the opposite on. There we go. All right. So very good. There's a couple of examples of accumulators with their method of storing for survival. Oops. There we go. So storing for survival and those characteristics that aren't an accident. Yep. So if you think of like a succulent that you're more familiar with, these plants have a sort of that similar sort of feel. Imagine a cactus without the spines. Sort of that smooth, sort of fleshy feel of the cactus. Without spines is what these feel like. No scent. No scent at all. And very low growing. Color is relatively the same. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if that's I don't know why that is, but I'm guessing, oh, there's rails. I just heard the rails. So with that might be my signal to leave, since they probably are tired of me being on the edge of the marsh. So I'm so happy to bring these to you today. I will reply to any questions in the comments this afternoon. I really appreciate those. And thank you for tuning in for another edition of Lunchtime Live. And we'll see you next week. Have a great day.